Welcome, everybody. For those of you who don't know me, and I think most of you who are on right now do, I'm Greg White. I'm the founder of OC Product. Cosette Dwyer, one of our board members, is assisting on this, so you might hear her voice, and she might be fielding questions into the Q&A or chat. So if there's a female voice that you hear and you don't see a female voice on the screen, that's Cosette. So welcome to our second webinar in our Product Foundation series. I created Orange County Product Managers in 2009 to connect local professionals, local product professionals in Orange County in Southern California. We are a community of over 2,000 local product professionals and product adjacent aficionados, product marketing, software development, coaching. And so we've hosted over 120 events over our 16 years, including 6 Product Camp SoCal conferences. And if you want to learn more about us, you can visit our website at ocproduct.org or ocproductmanagers.org. We decided to run some webinars after doing so many in-person meetings, and we continue to do those, but we wanted to bring in some voices that are not anywhere near SoCal. So this is the second installment of our Product Foundation series. And 2 weeks ago, we had Rich Marinoff talking about money stories. Today, we have Steve Johnson on to talk about customer conversations. So Steve, I've known him for years, and he is on my personal Mount Rushmore of product gurus. If you saw my entertaining LinkedIn post a couple of weeks ago, go check out my LinkedIn profile and go see the nice AI work that put Rich and Steve alongside Marty Kagan and Melissa Perry on a big mountain. Steve is an author, speaker, and product coach. He is the CEO of Product Growth Leaders. He is the chief architect of the Quartz Open Framework, and he's the original pragmatic marketing instructor. He's taught 2 in-person workshops with OC product managers over the years, and this is our first webinar with Steve. So now I'd like to welcome Steve. And Steve, the podium's yours.
Great, thank you. Glad to be here. I've found that much of the confusion in product management is that we're simply talking to the wrong people. We're talking to executives and salespeople, developers and support teams, when we ought to be talking to customers, real people who buy and use our products. And so much of what I've encountered in my career in terms of chaos gets eliminated when we become the experts on customers and potential customers. So before we go, here's my coordinates. I'm Steve Johnson with Product Growth Leaders. There's my email, there's my LinkedIn, there's my YouTube channel. But people who know me know that I like to start off with a story. Now, this is not my car, by the way, but do you know the company called LoJack? It's a locator service for expensive cars. And during a customer conversation, one person remarked to the product manager, "Hey, now I need a LoJack for my dad." And he said, "What in the world? What do you mean?" And he said, "My dad has Alzheimer's, and sometimes he wanders away from home." And the product manager took that back to the company, and it galvanized the company to create a whole new service known as LoJack Safety Net. And it's designed to locate individuals with Alzheimer's, dementia, or other conditions that increase the risk of wandering. And I think that's brilliant. It's not. One of my favorite sayings is, when customers tell you what solution they need, they're almost always wrong. But when they tell you what problem they have, they're almost always right. And so this problem drove a whole new line of business for LoJack. And ultimately, one of the vice presidents at LoJack took it over as his full gig. I think it's a really fascinating story. So it feels like I've spent my whole career working with product teams to remove chaos. And chaos seems to fall in 3 categories. We've got chaos in process, chaos in roles, and chaos in responsibilities. And today I want to talk about the most critical responsibility, which is customer conversations. And part of the reason that's chaos is because a lot of people in product roles don't even realize that that is their responsibility. So we have an idea, we're sitting around a bar and we've got a cocktail napkin and we've come up with this great idea. And where do we go from here? The first thing we normally do is go build a product. But I'm going to show you in a second that there's a few steps in between. But before we do, Greg, could you bring up our poll? I'd like to know how many customers each of you has talked to this year. I mean, we're almost to the end of March, right? We're not in April yet. Yeah, so we're almost at the end of the first quarter. Have you talked to none, a few, or many, or a lot? Did the survey come up?
We're at
Yeah,
19.
people are voting. We've got 21 votes in with 35 participants so far.
Okay, all right.
So I think
not seeing it on my screen.
about a dozen people still need to decide if they've talked to customers or not. Or they're multitasking.
Also could be. I asked that question in a recent training, and the answer was none. They were well into developing a product, and not one person in development, in design, or in product management had ever had a conversation with a real person.
I think going based on the pop bag, microwave bag rule, the popping has stopped.
Okay.
Although the bag isn't full, but I'll publish the result.
Okay.
Is it visible?
Not to me, but maybe because I'm there. Can you just tell us the answer?
I can tell what it is. We've got a few at 64%. We have none at 24%. And a lot at 12%.
And so in the chat confirms that everyone can see it.
Oh, gotcha. Thank you for doing that. So today we're going to talk about how important it is to have those customer conversations. Some of you are doing a lot of it. Most of you are doing a little bit of it. And for those of you who have said none, I want to convince you that customer conversations is your next step. So we have this idea for, whatever. And if we've read our lean startup, we know, well, the first thing you do is build something. No, you've skipped a few steps. So nowadays we've learned, but don't build the product, build the prototype. I mean, after all, we've got vibe coding now, right? So you've got an idea, you've got a prototype, you've got a product, you're ready, right? Oh, but there's more work to be done. First, you need to determine, does your idea create customer value? And does it collect business value? In the end of the day, we need customers to be happy and we need ourselves to be happy. And finally, how is your idea different than what's already out there? And so this is work that typically we see product managers doing. Oh, but wait, there's one other piece we almost never think about in product management, and that is you don't stop when the product compiles or when the software works. You ultimately have to get it into the market. So there's still more work to do. So our questions are, when we're introducing a new product, what is it? Should we build it? And are we ready to offer it? And that's a whole lot more really than build, measure, adapt. To do this right, we need customer conversations throughout the journey from idea to market with customers, with partners, with team members, with executives. And customer conversations are not a research technique. They're a leadership behavior. Product leaders are experts on the customer. and it's the source of product management credibility. So before I go into some of the details of how to do that, have any questions come in that I should respond to, Greg?
No
Just a
questions.
comment that getting on a customer's calendar is a challenge.
Yes.
Good point. Good point. There are a lot of challenges for sure. I think a bigger I think there are three challenges. One, the first challenge is, what do you mean that's my job? The second challenge is, nobody in the company wants you to do it. It seems like there's an awful lot of barriers to successfully meeting with customers. And then, sure enough, our customers are pretty busy too. But I have some success stories I want to share as we go along. The other thing about customer conversations is you learn different things when you talk to them. If you're talking to a customer who has not purchased a product of any kind, you're going to learn about problems. If you talk to customers right after they purchase in, say, win-loss analysis, you'll find out most about the buyer's journey. You won't really learn that much about that will inform the product. You'll learn stuff that will inform sales enablement. Once they're into the implementation, you'll learn a lot about onboarding. How difficult was it to set up new users and set permissions and configure the widgets or whatever. And then finally, it's not until they're really into production that you get deep insights on how the product is solving problems for customers. And there's one other step you may have noticed that I skipped. While they're buying, stay away from them. The big fear from sales is that a product manager is going to engage in some way with a customer during the sales cycle and reveal something like, hey, we're right now exploring whether we're going to put AI in our product and we'd like to get your feedback. And the sales guy goes, dude, I just told him we already had AI in our product, so shut the hell up, you're ruining my deal. So never set up an interview with an active buyer. You really won't learn anything valuable and you'll irritate your salesperson. So let's talk about a famous invention which had a very interesting go-to-market. A lot of times people struggle to understand a new product concept, and this wasn't even a product concept yet. Spencer Silver, a scientist at 3M, developed a weak reusable adhesive. He made a bad glue, basically. And yet, he showed it to a friend, and Art Fry said, hey, that might solve a problem I'm having. Bookmarks fall out of my hymnal at church. And so Art Fry, used that, not very good glue to create the first Post-it note. And he showed it around the office, and people were like, man, that's cool. I need me some of those. And so they made up a bunch of them and said, hey, we've got a great product idea here. And yet they still weren't sure. So what they did, they found people inside the building liked it, but having colleagues like it is not the same as having customers like it. So what they did, which I think is simply brilliant, instead of guessing, unannounced, 3M sent Post-it notes to administrative assistants at large companies across the country. And now, of course, you probably couldn't do that. If a mysterious box that I didn't order showed up with really heavy stuff inside, it'd probably get destroyed. But still, they didn't do a focus group. They didn't do a survey. They didn't say, hey, do you like this idea? They sent them out, and those the Post-it note pads disappeared. People were using them left and right, and they started getting orders for more, and they hadn't really planned on taking orders almost immediately, but that's what happened to them. And that's a really important distinction when you're dealing with a new idea. Salespeople and customers and analysts do not understand new ideas until they see it. Another famous story, everybody was telling Apple they needed to build a netbook. You may not remember netbooks, but networks were shitty laptops. And Steve Jobs said, no, we don't want that. We want the iPad. But he didn't tell anybody about the iPad. until he showed it to them. And they all went, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And when that came out, I remember going to trainings and seeing people with their Windows laptops and their BlackBerry phones and their Apple iPads, which I think introduced Apple to a lot of people, frankly. But anyway, we get feedback from all over the place. Leadership, sales, services, success, support. We need to combine that with our personal experience and our domain expertise. And with that, you'll be able to find problems because they're everywhere. My friend Barb Nelson helped me with this presentation and was really instrumental in helping me or forcing me to write the book I'm going to talk about here in a moment. We're constantly on the phone going, where's the product manager in this? You know, we'd love to have the product manager watch us try to use the product. It's really quite amazing when you start seeing problems everywhere. And customer expertise is this critical aspect of product management. And we get caught up in all the other stuff. You know, we get caught up in JIRA or user stories or road mapping or prioritization. But the source of your credibility is your customer expertise. And when I talk about customer expertise with leaders, they go, well, wait a minute, don't salespeople have customer expertise? Yes, they do, of the deals they're working, not the whole market. So let me, so I'm now off my soapbox there for a moment. I'm going to talk about different kinds of conversations in a second, but does somebody have a story to share about some insights they received from a customer conversation? Just put it in the chat, I guess.
Yeah, put in the chat and we can give everyone the ability to speak if they want.
Okay.
You also did get a question about the Post-it note one. Someone asked, was any note included when a box of Post-it notes were sent to AA?
Oh, I don't know the answer to that, but that's pretty hysterical. Yeah. You would hope that there would be some note of what this is. All right, well, you guys noodle on that. I'm going to have another prompt here in a second. If you've got a story that you think of as I tell some of my stories, then we can go down that path. There are 4 types of customer conversations you should be having. And let me go back in my own history. My first job in product management, my boss said, we're really blind. We're getting tiny little things from support and sales. You know, we need this tiny little feature, or we need this tiny little capability. And I don't feel like we're really getting good information. He said, so I'm going to set you up with 10 conversations per quarter in order to get your bonus. And it was such a tricky way of doing it because suddenly now my wife is involved. She's like, hey, have you made your calls this quarter? Because baby needs new shoes. So it was no longer, my boss telling me to do it. It was, my other boss telling me to do it. And I found there were 4 different kinds of conversations to have. Defining your personas means you need to engage with the people who are going to buy and use your products so you know who they are. And I'll talk about each one of these briefly. Then we have problem discovery of, okay, now that we know what people we're trying to make happy, what problems are they having? I've got a story about that. Then we validate with a solution, and then after the sale, we do win-loss analysis. And all 4 of these are the responsibility of product management. So let's start with personas. So you probably know personas. Personas are the archetype of the kind of customer we're trying to satisfy, and they have different roles. Some of the personas you'll talk about are deciding what product to buy. Some may be approving the product. Some are consulted but not really approving or deciding. Some of them are using, and people may have multiple of these. But we were working with a team recently who was focused on Sam, the senior analyst. He had 20 years of experience and a bachelor's degree in computer science. And he wanted to have all sorts of customization and configuration and the ability to hack the code and all sorts of stuff. But their product was really designed, they didn't even perhaps realize it, but their product was really designed for a junior analyst. In their case, Jane, the junior analyst, has less than a year experience with their type of product, but she's got an MBA. So she's coming at it from an entirely different mental model. And she'd rather configure something than create it. And she's much more like the mainstream market. I think a lot of times we as product people think about those super early adopters, the ones that are on the left-hand side of crossing the chasm, as opposed to the mainstream market, which is where all the money is. So Sam is an entirely different kind of person than Jane. So we start with personas, then we move into, with those personas, doing problem discovery. A few years ago, I was volunteering at a local charity, and I told the office manager I was kind of a computer expert, and I asked how I could help, and she said, "Oh, great, we don't have any technical people here. Could you set up these computers? Could you update the software? You know, could you get the printer connected to Wi-Fi?" And I'm like, wow, what a boring hour this is going to be, you know, just clicking OK for an hour. But while I was doing that, I heard all these other volunteers swearing at their computers. And finally, you know, Windows was doing some long install thing. And I went over and I said, "So, hey, what's going on? Why are you so upset here?" And they said, "Our database is filled with Mr. and Mrs. records." And I said, I'm sorry, I've been in computers my whole life. That is not a computing term. What's a Mr. and Mrs. record? And they brought it up and showed me their donor database. And every few records was corrupted. And what had happened was another volunteer, trying to be helpful, had imported a donor database, a new set of records for the donor database. And anytime the title had an ampersand in it, such as, you know, Mr. and Dr. or Mr. and Mrs. or whatever, the ampersand threw the import off one field. And I said, "Really, is this a lot of stuff?" And they're like, "Oh yeah." And they showed me one after another. So I sat down and quickly wrote a script to copy and paste things where they belonged. And I came back over and I said, "Okay, hit this function key," and zip zop, everything moved into the regular places. And they went nuts. They were like, "Oh my gosh, my life is forever changed." And later on, I thought, I asked them, you know, "Why didn't you mention this? I mean, that's a real problem." And they said, "Well, we just didn't think you could do anything about it. I mean, computers suck." So I had a conversation that led to an observation, which followed up with another customer conversation that helped me understand the problem. And now that I can understand the problem, I'm ready to do a prototype. And here may be the most famous prototype of all time. This is in, I think, in your library, your museum, right in San Jose. Oh wait, wrong part of the California. It's in Barb's library. Anyway, the first Palm Pilot was a block of wood that fit into Jeff Hawkins' shirt pocket, and he pretended to use it. He printed off a sample page and pasted it to the piece of wood. And every time somebody'd say, "Hey, are you free for lunch on Wednesday?" he would take it out of his pocket and he'd get his little stylus and he'd pretend to check his calendar. And when he needed to remember something, he would take it out of his pocket and bring out the to-do list and see and pretend to do the work. And from that, he went through multiple screen images and also multiple sizes of the block of wood, because some of his shirts had big pockets and some of his shirts had small pockets. So that's like, I think, the most famous prototype of all time. But you can find all sorts of cool prototypes on Kickstarter. This is I think it's a clever clock. It tells you the time by quoting from a book. So in this particular clock, when the picture was taken, it was 10 minutes till 10, and that is in the midst of a sentence from a book by James Joyce, which I think is really wild. But 8,000 people thought that was such a good idea. They pledged $1.3 million to bring this to life. And then they had proof of concept. It's more fun, really, to go to Kickstarter and look at some of the nonsense that's out there. I have a screenshot in another presentation of this person was trying to raise $25,000 and had raised like $2.50. And reading, looking at his prototype and reading his marketing verbiage, I have no idea what his product did, except it was something to do with AI. So the point here is we need to be sure to understand the problem before we start sharing our solution. And I know that seems logical, but we so often don't do it. If we show the demo, the customers are going to talk about the demo. If we show the prototype, they're going to nitpick it. But you won't be having a conversation about how this solves problems for you. Early on, you want feedback, not applause. And that's why, in my view, prototypes should feel unfinished. They should be more like the Palm Pilot and less like perhaps the smart clock I just showed you. Some of you have probably read the book, The Mom Test, which is delightful. And the bottom line is, in the book, they say you shouldn't ask your mom whether your business is a good idea because she loves you and doesn't want to hurt your feelings. But in her head, she's like, oh my God, this guy's never getting out of my basement. And that's technically true, but it almost misses the point. You shouldn't ask anyone if your business is a good idea. You should be asking about their problems and the pain of their problems. When we start talking about the solutions, they're inclined to like it or nitpick it. But first, we need to understand, how bad is this problem? And a lot of us are turning to AI. And years ago, a lot of us turned to analyst research, or what's called secondary research. When I moved to Gainesville, Virginia, where I now live, we had one small hardware store. It was right across the street. It was one of those places where you had to close the door yourself, and it had a little bell that rang when you opened the door, and it had wooden floors, and it had like 3 old guys working there, and I'd come in and they'd say, hey Steve, what's your project? And I'm like, oh, I'm just getting some stuff to do some painting. And they're like, okay, well, everything in your cart is wrong, we'll set you up, and sure enough, they gave me all the professional tools I really should have been using when I was painting or whatever. And then the next year, some analyst revealed that this Gainesville town that I live in was growing really quickly. And within a year, 5 chain stores opened to service this community. A year after that, all 5 of them closed their stores. But by then, my hardware store was out of business. And now I have no hardware store. I have to go to another city to go over to a Home Depot. And so I don't trust secondary research. It's like, if it's published to all the hardware stores, then all the hardware stores are going to make the same decision based on that information. And guess what? AI, machine learning, data science, this is all about secondary research tools. It's pulling information from the past, not predicting the future. AI can't hear what's being said. They can't see grimaces on your face when you encounter that button that doesn't seem to work. You can, with customer conversations, you can see reactions and confusion. You can understand why something's valuable. And I believe deeply that you need to be a human for that. And the way we're all going to keep our jobs in the years to come is by being human, not trying to outdo AI at analytics. One more example of that. I was doing a conversation with a customer, and at the end, he said, hey, could you ask me that first question again? And I went, why? And he said, because I didn't trust you yet. He couldn't tell yet whether I was a sales guy or not. But after we had the conversation, he was like, I want to tell you my story, basically, which was brilliant. I've had, over the years, I've had amazing experiences of seeing how people do the work, hearing them complaining about the Mr. and Mrs. records, or seeing how, I remember I was at a place where they had like a big box of semiconductors, and there was no way to tell what any of those were. And a vendor like my company had seen that and had built a little sensor, a testing tool that would tell you what the circuit was. I never would have thought of that in the comfort of my home, Anyway, customer conversations give you insights that secondhand methods will never have. And with customer conversations, as I said, you can see their reactions, you can see their confusion, their frustration in real life and in real time. And I've got one more to talk about, which is win-loss, but let me pause for a moment and see if any questions have come in, Greg, that you want to share.
Nil shared a comment, a story. My customers that accept 360 were product managers. I was a product manager, so obviously I knew everything I needed to know, right? Wrong. Every time I talked to a customer or a prospect, I learned something new. And
Brilliant.
Barb affirmed that. It says, every time I talk to customers, I learn something. Gary, whenever I do a win-loss report in my email and VM, I say, I am not a salesperson. I am not trying to change your mind. I am trying to learn from your expertise and experience.
Brilliant. Brilliant. That reminds me of a while back, I switched from Comcast to Verizon for my internet. And I honestly don't remember why. I think it had something to do with I could change my bandwidth through the web instead of having to make a phone call. I'm not positive. But soon after I canceled, I got a call from Comcast. And they said, hey, why did you leave? And in my heart, I was like, I want this to be a win-loss call. But I know it isn't. I know it's a what'll it take to get you to come back? We'll throw in HBO for free kind of a call. So I told them I'm no longer using the internet. And now there's some poor product manager at Comcast saying, look at all these people who are leaving Comcast because they're no longer using the internet. The reality is what we learned from win-loss can't be done on a paper form or a web form by a sales rep, which is a nice lead into my next thing. I was doing a win-loss interview and I had the funniest experience. The person I was dealing with was the technical reviewer, and she chose my product. Her boss overruled her and bought the competitor's product, and the person I was talking with, was furious. And she told me all about the weaknesses of the competitor's product. And then at the end, she said, oh, and by the way, would you like their proposal and pricing? I don't need it anymore. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I'll take that from you. Thank you. That would never have occurred on a web form or on a survey. So the fourth technique is win-loss analysis. The typical public school football team spends more on win-loss analysis than the typical company. For those of you who played sports in school, man, they're looking at those game films the night of the game, and they're reviewing them over the weekend, and they're adjusting their playbooks accordingly.
They're looking at them in real time now. They have big screens on the sideline. They come off the field and sit and watch the play that just happened.
Wow. Real time. Amazing.
Real time.
And it's not so much that Greg dropped the ball. It's that, hey, this play that we practiced, we need to practice some more because the play fell apart. They're looking for patterns of behavior. So continuous win-loss and to your point, Greg, real time even, Win-loss conversations are your best source of competitive information, and here's the big trick. And I talk about this in my Fundamentals of Managing Products class too. Don't call it win-loss analysis. Start with win analysis, but don't call it that. Call it customer success stories. Salespeople love customer success stories. So you can reach out to your sales team and say, hey, I'm doing some analysis to drive sales enablement and customer success stories. And they love that. Their fear is this one. Their fear is on losses, that we're going to do a witch hunt and we're going to see how they drop the ball, when in fact that's rarely the case. Once you've earned some credibility with your sales team, you can start doing win-loss. You can start doing loss analysis, but don't call it that either. Call it competitive analysis, something every salesperson wants. So I talked about really 4 different kinds of customer conversations. 1 to uncover our personas, 1 to uncover problems, 1 to uncover, validate solutions. And then finally, after the whole thing's said and done, why do we win and why do we lose? And I'll tell you, the biggest frustration for leadership is they don't know why they lose, but even more frustrating is when they don't know even why we win.
Before you move on,
Yeah.
one of the 2 biggest products that I ever created in my career was directly out of a loss analysis. And I actually got Idea of the Year at Experian for
Great.
a product that came directly out of loss analysis.
Brilliant. It's these customer conversations, I've said it before, I think they really are a superpower for product managers, and something that AI doesn't do well. So we have these ideas. You found an idea from loss analysis. I found an idea from encountering friction when using, a product. We've got these ideas and we need to, convert those ideas into success in the marketplace. And the way to get there is with customer conversations, should be woven into your process. At the end, to succeed, products must solve problems that are vital to the buyer or they won't buy it, valuable to the user or they won't use it, and ultimately viable for your business or else you can't afford to offer it. So let me wrap up with a promo for my book as a gift to OC Product Management or Manager, whichever one you call it, OC, whatever.
OC Product.
OC Product, okay. You can get 100% discount on the EPUB version of the book. It includes an EPUB version, a Kindle version, and a PDF version of the book using that QR code. Or if you can remember it, the URL is pgl.fyi/cc-info, and use OC Product at checkout and get 100% discount. Also, you can get a copy of this presentation using that QR code or the link shown on the screen. So Greg, have you had a chance to read much of that book?
Not much. I have skimmed through it, and there are definitely good nuggets in there. I will be commenting and probably making LinkedIn posts on excerpts.
Lovely.
Yep.
So as I said, I find that much of the confusion in product management roles and responsibilities is we don't even know that customer conversations is the source of our power. So once again, here's my coordinates. If you want to follow up with me on LinkedIn, I see our friend May Wong has just placed an order. Thank you, May. If you want to stay in touch with me, here's my stuff, and I will stop sharing unless, well, hang on. I'll put this back one more second.
Yeah, you got a QR on there.
So, have any questions come in, Greg?
Gary and Nils aren't are mad that they had to pay 99 cents.
Well, well, they didn't. Well, yeah, I have no funny response to that.
Scott did comment. Anytime you share anything with customers, assume it's going to be shared with competitors.
Very true. Very true. And you know me, I've got a story for that. My company, how to do this? Yeah, my company was acquired by our arch rival competitor, and I met Joanne, who was the product manager of the product I competed with. And she said, "Steve, it's such a pleasure to meet you finally. I've been reading your work for years." And she opened up her dress drawer and pulled out a folder labeled Steve Johnson. And it was every single thing I had ever given to salespeople or to customers. She said, in particular, competitive information got to her generally in the same week as when I published it. Because for a salesperson, internal use only means distribute immediately. Oh, Eric is having a hard time at checkout. It froze.
Yeah, it's probably overloading the checkout cart
Could be.
with everybody hitting it all at once.
Okay, well, write down the link and the code, and you can try it again. As May says, I'm just too popular, or at least the book is. Matt Moore got it. Good for you, Matt. Neon got it. Sweet. Rosalie got it. So, Greg, I know you're in the midst of reading the book, but did you have any questions that you wanted to pose on as a representative of your audience?
As a representative of my audience. No, you and I talk all the time. I do want to let everybody know before people start hopping off that we're going to be doing this again on April 23rd with Jason Knight. So that will be part 3 or edition 3 or webinar 3, whatever, of our Product Foundations webinar series. Jason Knight, April 23rd. And
He's great. I like that.
Yeah, Jason's great. And you can go to ocproduct.org and register. And if you're in SoCal, we will be having Vidya Dinamani coming up from San Diego. She's coming into OC on April 8th, and that's an in-person event. And she's going to talk about how great product teams drive outcomes. So
very good. And you know, you learn a lot about outcomes in customer conversations. You know,
Michael wants to see the Swiss Army knife.
I'm sorry, that's a different presentation, but sure enough, if you see, if you can imagine it, for their 100th anniversary, the Swiss Army people put every single blade they had ever made onto a knife as a demo. And I saw it and said to my wife, you know, we've got to get one of these. And she's like, are you kidding me? It's $1,200 and you can't travel with it. So I ended up carrying around a picture instead. But you can find it. There's a hysterical thing on Amazon where they've got the knife. It's hard to find. And they've got like 1,000 fake customer testimonials underneath of all the things that people were able to do with their Army knife. Like they used the Jedi blade to, you know, cut down a tree or something. You know, it's pretty wild.
Steve, I don't remember, it wasn't in our promo, but are there docs or templates, Cliff is asking, for reducing chaos? I don't know if that's this webinar. I know you have templates that help reduce chaos.
Yes, I do have a set of templates for just doing product management in a fairly nimble way. And if you go to quartzprocess.com, and it will take you to the landing page. I think that's right. Or quartzopenframework.com will get you there as well. And thank you, Scott, for the link to the Amazon page. I assume that's what that is. You can also buy houses on Amazon in case you ever want one. But anyway, go to Quartz Process or Quartz Open Framework, and either of those .coms will lead you to a landing page. And there you'll find a starter kit for doing product management one page at a time.
Oh, there you go. Scroll down and you get the free templates. So hopefully that's what you're looking for.
I'm trying to remember if we've already answered this question in the Q&A or not. There's a question that says, with AI reducing execution to near zero, how to convince leaders to invest in customer conversations?
Good question.
That is a good question. You know, I had a story the other day, and I'm going blank on it right now. Yeah, I'm sorry. I had it, but I lost it. Yeah, well, let me do it this way. I believe that with AI supporting the design process and the development process, we're going to have smaller programming teams, smaller development teams, who are going to have a greater bandwidth than in the past. And it's going to be more important rather than less. It's going to be more important to have product managers feeding that. And I think we've all worked with developers who should not be, who are more focused on the solution than they are on the problem. So it seems to me that recognizing that the skill set of being a problem finding manager is different than the mindset of being a solution manager, if that makes any sense. And since I can't remember the story I was trying to think of, I really do think the stories that we've heard today about the things we heard that sales has never heard, that support has never heard, that the AI has never heard, having those stories will make a difference in your conversation with executives.
So when speaking as a person who's looking for his next opportunity and speaking on behalf of the others like me, many of them out there, when do you think that companies are going to see the light and realize that they need to do these things and need people to do these things and can't rely on AI to solve all their problems?
Well, you know, we are at the height of inflated expectations. And I think over the next 18 months, we're going to reach the trough of disillusionment and realize that AI is not this magic box. It's powerful. I mean, I use it every day. It does a lot of things well. It doesn't do everything well. And ultimately, we are going to still need some people who work on our companies.
Yeah, Brent Wilson chimed in on that. I was talking with a developer yesterday who's fully engaged in AI, but said the best that he's gotten is a 75% solution, which is huge. But he emphasizes that the 25%, both in design and in product market fit, is crucial to the product success.
Brilliant. Thank you, Brent. Good to see you, by the way, or see your name. And Barb calls out, you know, make that part of your schedule. I was doing a training somewhere in California for some company whose first letter was A. And it's not that I'm being anonymous. It's like I can't remember. But there was an older guy in the front row with his arms crossed the entire training. And he said, management won't let us do this stuff. And I'm like, I've been teaching civil disobedience all day. You know, these are things that you can do without permission. Most of them. I mean, nobody stops you from creating a persona document and using it to inform the dev team. Nobody stops you from talking to them about the problems you're trying to solve instead of the features you think they ought to build. And it's more difficult maybe with customer conversations, and yet in my first job as a product manager, I would frequently get a call from support saying, this customer is super angry, can you talk to him? And look at there, I'm having a customer conversation. Scott shares a great quote from Tay Bannerman: what parts of human judgment and context are essential and what parts are inefficiencies we can optimize away? And I really do, I believe, or at least I do believe that AI is going to help us with a lot of the nonsense of the administrivia, the analyzing large large data sets and be a tremendous supplement to a product manager's skill.
I like that word, administrivia.
Yeah, one of our friends says, I have never used Jira and I never will. And I think the time has come when pretty much an agent can do that work now. If not now, very soon. So we can get back to, real work.
I'm curious, what's the input on that? When you're writing a user story, if it's a Jira or a Azure DevOps and ADO input, that's what the engineering team, if the engineering team still wants to consume that, what's your input?
Well, that's the big question, isn't it? I mean, usually the input is a sales guy said, I need this feature. And then somebody wrote a user story of, as a user, I want this feature so I can have this feature I want. Or as a salesperson, my customer asked for this feature, so give me this damn feature. Most user stories are really feature statements, and they were supposed to be problem statements if you go back to the original writing by the creator of user stories. Well, I see some texts are coming by. If we define features before you define the story, you're doing it wrong. The number one mistake perpetrated by the users of the tools, and that's absolutely right. If you're and somebody whose name is going to come to me later said, if you're writing user stories without talking to a user, you're writing stories. You're writing fiction.
Fiction. Eric said, product managers are the essential human connective tissue between the customer problems and the solutions. AI will mostly replace labor-intensive coding and overstaffed software engineering teams.
I believe that too. And,
I've heard multiple people talk, either flip the ratio of ballpark 4 engineers to every product manager to a 1-to-1. I've even heard 1 to 4 product managers for every engineer, because there's so many customer conversations and those types of things, non-engineering facing activities that need to be done, and engineering can happen so fast because you have AI tools to accelerate that process.
That's what I believe the future is. That it's going to be, product management may in fact be, well, even today, product management is often the blockage, that they're so busy reading aloud to other people from SharePoint or Jira that they haven't done the front end of the backlog. And so the number one failure for Scrum is that there's not enough stuff ready in the backlog. So I could see if you're dramatically increasing the productivity of your dev team, that you will need more people feeding the engine. But remember, as we saw with the Swiss Army knife, more features isn't necessarily more better.
Right. Well, I mean, so when I was running product in my last full-time role, the argument was we need more product managers to keep the engineers busy and to go through all the stuff that sales wants done.
Mm-hmm. And that's how you end up with 100 blades on your Swiss Army knife.
Yes. Classic feature factory.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, going way back to my volunteer story, you know, I observed problems they had that they didn't even recognize were problems or had solutions. And yet I did the trivial stuff. I mean, anybody could have set up those computers. I mean, maybe connecting to Wi-Fi was tricky for, you know, truly, you know, novices, but still, I didn't change the outcomes for that organization by hooking up 3 computers. Whoops. Gosh, so many new messages here.
You're very popular.
Cool. Licky says stories are the breakdown of what is needed by the business to manifest the feature.
I think that's actually Lily. I think there's a typo in her name.
Oh,
Yeah, that's Lily.
okay.
We know her.
If you go back, though, in the original writing, a user story was not a formula. It was tell a story about a user problem so that developers understand the context in a sentence or two, as I recall, not as a formulaic Mad Libs. And I've spent much of my career telling that, you know, sharing that story of what, well, you know, I had a very lucky first job. I sat down with my dev team and I said, you know, I really want to do well here. You know, how can I contribute meaningfully? And they said, tell us about the business and tell us about the customers and tell us about the problems. And nowhere did they say PRD, MRD, story, requirements, any of that stuff. It was tell us about problems in the market. And I was like, great, I know how to do that. Well, listen, Greg, why don't you wrap up?
Yeah. So we are near the top of the hour, and we still have 27 attendees. So thank you for hanging out for the full hour. Steve, thank you so much for sharing an hour of your time with us and your wisdom. Hopefully there were a lot of downloads of free copies of customer conversations. And for those of you like me who like old school and highlighter, it's available on Amazon. So go check it out, and hopefully we'll see you next month when we bring Jason Knight to this same space. And if you're in SoCal, come check us out. We'll be in person April 8th. So with that, we'll sign off. Thank you, Steve, and thank you everybody for joining, and thank you, Cosette, for pushing the buttons in the background. Take care.
Great week. Bye now.